name is Savannah. Thank you so much for watching. If you are coming back to watch this video after having watched my other videos that I recorded last week, that is super validating for me. Thank you. I can't tell if that was embarrassing or not. Probably was. If I think too much about that, I will probably shame delete. So I'm going to try to just let it go in all possibilities that it is very much cringe. I'll just let it sit there instead. I today am going to be talking about blood clots and my experience with experiencing a pulmonary embolus event, or what is called a pulmonary embolism, but I had a whole bunch of them, which that term is, that refers to blood clots or a blood clot being lodged in a way that is blocking blood flow to the lungs, and cutting off one's oxygen, and often leads to death. And talking about it clearly messes up my words, so hopefully that stops soon in this video. But to get into this, I think that this is a super important topic because it's not very talked about, and yet so many people take hormonal birth control, which makes people way more likely to experience a blood clot. And it's in every ad, it's in every handout you're given, and it is thought of that if you're over 35 and smoke, that's the only way that it'll happen. But that is not the case. If you're over 35 and smoke, you know, you should really watch out, but everyone who takes birth control with estrogen in the ingredients should know the signs and be ready to listen to their body and take action and advocate for themselves, because this is not something I was at all aware of 5 years ago when this happened to me. So before I get into that, the reason that I was on a birth control pill called Loestrin, 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 spelling bee champ right here. I've never done a spelling bee, don't know why I said it. I was taking Loestrin because I was not having sex with penises at this time. However, I have endometriosis, and what I love about hormonal birth control that contains estrogen is that it makes my periods lighter or makes them stop. It makes my pain that comes with those stop. And there's a side effect of better mood and mental health and better acne. So those are really nice things. What I don't love is when I'm just trying to get some endometriosis help and it tries to kill me. So I've written down just some blood clot info to share with all of you guys. And I want to talk about what coagulation is, and what birth control does to your body as it relates to blood clotting. So for people who take birth control that contains estrogen, you are 2 to 6 times more likely to experience a blood clot than if you were just living your life and were not consuming this hormone. And with that in mind, this happens just a pulmonary embolism event, not even a blood clot in general, but it being formed and ending up in your lungs. This happens to 1 in 3,000 people in the US every single year. I can't believe that. Like, that stat, and yet I didn't know what was going on. It's crazy. And doctors, that's not their first thought either. At least not the medical staff I ran into that night in 2019. So with those numbers in mind, a blood clot is coagulated blood that is blocking blood flow to an artery, like within an artery that goes to your lung, in the sense of a pulmonary embolus. It usually starts as what's referred to as a DVT, which stands for deep vein thrombosis, and that is a deep vein usually behind your knee or in your calf. There will be redness and extreme pain. It'll be pretty obvious that you're having a blood clot in your leg. If you're lucky enough to have a blood clot form in your limb and stay there and not go to another area that is more dangerous in your body. So usually they form in your legs. They can also form in your arms or get lodged in, your under your shoulder. I've heard of that before, but most commonly they are formed in your legs and get stuck in your legs, in your calf or behind the knee if they're not going to move along elsewhere. But in terms of it indeed moving along elsewhere to your lung, or lungs, if there are multiple, some of the symptoms that you should watch out for are shortness of breath, chest pain, a dry cough, nausea, lightheadedness, low oxygen or O2 level, increased heart rate, and there are other symptoms as well, but struggling to breathe and feeling weird and knowing that this is a possibility, it's good to get checked out. Ways that when you go in, if this ever happens to you, and I very much hope it doesn't, things to ask for are having your D-dimer levels looked at in your blood work. And this is not always a perfect solution because false positives actually happen a lot with D-dimer levels when being tested for in your blood. But if it's really elevated, it can be a good first stop to seeing if that's what we're looking at. And what you would then need to do to diagnose it is a CT scan with contrast. So what that experience is like, if you have not had one, you would go into a room with a machine that is circular shaped, and you would lay on, you're probably already in a hospital bed, you're not feeling great, but you would shift over to a different bed, which would move you into inside the circle shaped machine, and you would be asked to put your arms up above your head while your body is while it's scanning your chest area. And it's not a tube like an MRI machine where you are, you know, confined and really stuck and your whole body's in there. It's kind of like just a big donut with a camera. And once you're in there and in position, it will have a spinning sort of tube that is a bit loud for a few moments, going around you, taking pictures. And before it takes its final pictures, in your IV port, they will administer contrast, and that I'm not the best to explain this, but it creates some sort of glowy something to be able to see things in a different light, so to speak, inside of your body. And when they push that through, it can feel like your full body, head to toe hot, all of a sudden. And it always, for everyone I've ever heard of, and myself at least, feels like you peed your pants. And you'll swear, like, I usually am like, this time I did, like, there's no way I didn't. I think I would know if I didn't. And they're like, you probably didn't, and I never have, but it feels that convincing. So yeah, that's pretty distracting if you're feeling worried for whatever reason about having the CT scan. It's a lot of radiation, which is a bummer, but with where we are at with science, that's just what you need to diagnose a lot of things that can kill you. So pick your poison, I suppose. So after that's diagnosed, which hopefully for you it isn't, I cannot say that enough, you will have a portable ultrasound probably to see if there are any other clots lingering around in your limbs, so that they can know, like, is there something else hanging out that could break off and go to your lungs, that we should be watching out for, or has this event happened and now our sole focus should be on just treating things as they are. In my experience, I didn't have any DVTs in my arms or legs. It was just what had already gotten to my lungs. But they checked, and after that, well, before that, but the treatment from there, once they have a picture of what's going on and it's confirmed to be blood clot related, the treatment is blood thinners, so that it can start breaking down over time, your blood clot or blood clots. This med is also called an anticoagulant. There are a bunch of different meds in this class. I took Xarelto, Xarelto, and unlike Loestrin, this one totally saved my life, and I'm so grateful for it. It broke down my blood clots, and they never really fully went away. They did get broken up to let some blood flow in, and they calcified in my lungs, and it left a lot of scarring in my lungs also. So my pulmonary and breathing situation in general just has not been too hot these past 5 years, but for the first I'd say like 3 to 6 months, I felt like I was very much on my deathbed. Once we went home, breathing felt so like such a chore. It was really hard to move around. Anything that would make breathing harder than laying down and being as still as possible. It was really difficult. Even getting up to go to the bathroom or to the kitchen, I remember just holding on to surfaces and items and the walls and just feeling like I would die but before I would get there. And I had been advised by my doctor that this, like when I was being released from the hospital a couple days after getting there, I had been advised to go see a notary or a lawyer or both and try to get documents in order, like a medical power of attorney, a will, anything else that was relevant to me, which was a scary thing to hear at 23. And I very much did do those things, but I remember crying on the way there and back, and just the days and weeks and months surrounding that really terrifying night were just so bleak and just really scary, thinking I'm like, I might not wake up. This could happen again. They could move. The med could not do its job. I wasn't given the reassurance that I wanted, and that was valid because I could have died, and I easily could have died, and it's just a miracle that I didn't, honestly. But I was on Xarelto, the anticoagulant, for 6 months, and then got off of it because it's a risk to be on blood thinners, because they thin your blood. And when your blood is thin, you become a really fragile being, because if you bleed, you can bleed out. So driving, anything can happen. You can trip and get cut. You can get a paper cut. You can be flossing and your gums can start bleeding. Like, you're really fragile, and once you start bleeding, it's hard to stop bleeding when you're taking anticoagulation meds. So I was scared, but I was scared to get off of my blood thinners, but I was also scared on them. So all I could really do is be grateful that I had them for as long as I did, and hopefully my lungs got the help they needed and the blood clots were gone or decreased enough, it wouldn't happen again, and I could live life a little less terrified of getting a cut. So there's a lot of unknowns when you have blood clots in your body and they can't just go away. It's really rare that you will have them removed, or it's just not typically how that goes. It's really risky to have them removed, so the best course of treatment is to take blood thinners for, some doctors do it for 3 months, some for 6, some for 9, some leave people on them for life. Typically it's one of those more shorter options, and then if there is a recurrence, then at that point they would keep you on them for life. But because of the risk versus benefit situation with them, that's typically the approach. But in getting off of them, you're able to more accurately do blood tests to see if there are any genetic markers for different coagulation disorders, or there's a handful that can make you more genetically likely to experience blood clots, and it's not a clear picture when you're actively taking blood thinners. So that is a positive in what getting off of them means. So yeah, I wanted to share just some other things. So in terms of birth control options that are safe, that are progestin only and contain no estrogen, some options are Micro-Nor, Nor-QD, Ovret, the Mirena IUD, the Depo-Provera shot, the Implanon implant. That's it. And that might sound like a lot to someone who's not familiar with birth control, but I bet, I mean, there's just so many different options for birth control options that do contain estrogen, because that is very much the norm, and that is very much what is most helpful to people. If you're solely looking to have pregnancy prevented, beyond other safe sex tools, those are options. And another piece to look further into as a resource to learn more about what I'm talking about here is stoptheclot.org. And then in terms of what was helpful to me while I was healing and taking anticoagulants, and in case someone watching is new to living with blood clots inside of their body, which I'm so sorry if that is you, been there, it's a big bummer. Things that gave me a little bit of peace were carrying, I just kept a little pouch on me that had gauze and bandages, a medical ID card, and a tourniquet, just everywhere I went, especially in the car. I also had an ID bracelet that I wore that said the med that I was taking, and that I had, experienced a pulmonary embolism. There also in my pouch was what's called Bleed Stop clotting powder. They make different brands of powder that you can put on a cut. There's also spray that can help stop bleeds quickly. In addition to my ID bracelet, I had written out my medical ID card, followed by important contacts like my mom, my partner, my physician, whatever else, and I had that laminated and put inside my car, where if I had gotten in an accident, someone would have seen quickly. And yeah, you can't take NSAIDs, 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 while you're on blood thinners, because they chew thin your blood. So if you're someone who experiences pain, you get headaches, and you usually turn to Advil, can't do that for now. So Tylenol, if you get headaches, Tylenol, and peppermint roll-on essential oil, that was helpful for me. Headache hat with ice that you can keep in the fridge and wear. But yeah, Xarelto, beyond the fear there was dizziness and weakness and fatigue and just feeling like really heavy, and easily bruising. And then one thing I didn't write down here, but that I remember, is getting a mosquito bite. It, instead of being a small little thing, it would get like huge. Just the way my body reacted while on blood thinners. But yeah, I'm happy to dive deeper into any of this, whether it's what to be aware of, what the experience while in the hospital looked like, or what those months after looked like. If anyone wants more information on anything there, I can go into that, or I can email with people. If there's anything, I'll include some resources in the description, I guess it would be called. And at this point, I'm now going to switch to voiceover of myself reading a journal entry from about 2 weeks after the event, and I'll just have a black screen. But thank you so much for watching, and I will be back on here soon. My sternum ached, my breaths hollow, sinking, fleeting, slowing, my skin alive with needle pricklings that weren't really there, my joints wrapped in fists, wrapped in resin, stiff, shrill. I called my mom, waking her up at 3 a.m. during her slumber party with my 5-year-old son. It was probably just a panic attack, my pulse astronomical, an elephant sitting on my chest, as they say. 23 years old. Why would I be having a heart attack? If it were a panic attack, why wasn't my Zoloft working like it should be? I'd been on it for months. My fiancé drove me to the ER 45 minutes away from our little home in the woods. I should have called 911. I should have gone in an ambulance, but I heard ambulance rides cost $10,000 or something wild like that. She drove with caution, hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, my window down, the 60-mile-per-hour wind greasing my hair, chilling my fevered forehead, my blurry eyes filled with tears, filled with the constellations I feared I was seeing for the last time. 2.5 weeks ago, I almost died. I woke up, my dreams interrupted, ribcage heavy, something not quite right, a premonition I wanted to push away. Salty tears escaped my eyes involuntarily, but I woke up. Had my sacred body not spoken? Had I told myself it was a dream, it was a nightmare? Had I brushed it off? Another panic attack? Had I not gone in? Had I not? You're very lucky. Had I not? The night I returned from the hospital, I couldn't sleep in my bed. I walked into my room, still weak, still wearing blood-stained ER socks, and saw my lifeless body on the bed. I saw the woman I loved waking up to my carcass, kissing me awake, but I don't wake. Her heartbeat increasing, letting out a confused giggle. Why isn't she waking up? Wake up, Savannah, stop it. She'd shake my stiff body. Maybe she'd tug at my lids, my eyes rolled back, my skin paler than usual. She'd lift me into her arms and see my blood pooling under my skin. She'd feel for my absent pulse, feel no exhalations. I saw myself ruin her life in an instant. Her screaming out, her calling my mom's daughter dead, my son hearing my mother's screams, hearing his other mother's screams through the phone and knowing my love in that moment, but growing up in grief, growing up and not remembering, not retaining our memories, our special bond holed up in photographs and short video clips in the cloud. Who would sacrifice for him like I had? Who would care for him when everyone else was gone? Our rare love would have died with me that night. Pulmonary embolism. Multiple large blood clots in both lungs. Blood thinners twice a day. If you miss a dose, well, don't miss a dose. Life or death. Laugh tracks. Yeah, don't miss a dose. A tight zipped body bag is carted by. I fall to the floor in Rite Aid after being told the total of the medication I need to survive. Every moment of mine a flash of life on earth. My mother's comforting, fastened clasp of a hug. All of her sacrifice, our friendship, all of our intricate little histories. My lover's touch, her lips on mine, my son's voice telling me he loves me, he likes me all the time, he loves me each day, Mommy. I make eye contact with my corpse in that bed when I come home, my eyes glossy, my nauseous conclusion that no one saw coming. I breathe in this accidental survival. My partner and I, we sleep on the couch. I pray to all the gods I don't know if I believe in, but want to thank them. I want to thank them so.